Okay, welcome everybody. This is the May meeting of the year 2022 of the Kingfield Neighborhood Association, the Kingfield Neighborhood Board. I think, Sarah, you said you threw the agenda in the chat, so that should be there for everybody to check out. Kind of have a busy meeting tonight with a lot of different things and some kind of particularly important stuff to talk to on the front end here with our mission statement conversation. So I will jump right into it right away. I don't believe that we have any non-board member community members, but I will kick it off with the community forum right now here. And as we are all community members, if anyone would like to add anything to the top of the meeting share, please do so now. Seeing none, I will move on to the consent agenda. This includes the agenda for tonight, which Sarah threw in the chat, plus the minutes of our last board meeting. Could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? I see Alice's hand.
Alice moved.
I move.
And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on either of those items? Seeing none. All those in favor, thumbs up. Yes in the chat. Yes. Opposed? And abstentions. That passes. Thanks, everybody. Moving on quickly to the next agenda item. Looking at the mission statement conversation and approval, I will very quickly turn it over to you, Katie. Thank you.
That was so fast. Rad. So I think in the agenda, these links are our final drafts of the mission statement. If folks want to open that up, I will just highlight that since, we have now probably discussed this every meeting since the new year. And the latest update to share is that we had a opportunity that board members could share any final feedback that folks had. And we had one person who shared feedback that we integrated. And then we've had a form in the email newsletter for neighbors to check out the mission statement and add any comments. And we've had a handful of good feedback from that, which we also integrated. And also some of the feedback was just like encouragement and support and like people who liked the mission statement. And we will continue to have that form available and sort of open as we begin to launch the mission statement and figure out our plan for getting it out there into the neighborhood more. And I think that's it. If anybody has any questions or just like further things that you want to add, I otherwise just sort of want to shout out both the whole board for everybody's really rigorous like participation with this. And then also the committee. We have had a lot of like funny, very Parks and Rec wordsmithing meetings, but also a lot of really serious discussion about why we chose every word we chose and like took really seriously all the engagement that we've had over the past year in the survey and from the board in this process.
Awesome, Katie. Thanks for that. I will just call out, I know one of the kind of main discussions and things that came out of the last, I believe it was the last board meeting, was around the word, I believe it was, we're talking about improving, that came up inside, I think some of the feedback, I think specifically from board members. And so you'll see a new word at the front of the mission statement, which is serving. So just wanted to call that out because that is kind of one of the most substantive changes that is in here. So maybe I'll just let everybody kind of scan through this quickly. I think the goal of tonight was to try to get feedback before the meeting, but obviously if there's any specific additional feedback or discussion that we would like to have, we can do that now. Otherwise, the plan is to vote on this and kind of adopt a new mission statement, guiding principles and strategies, which will then I think maybe have a brief discussion after that vote on how this is updated and kind of integrated into our existing information for the public. So I'll give everybody maybe a minute just to look through this quickly. Okay. Any comments, questions, or anything anyone would like to share right now? Otherwise, I will kind of move us into our official kind of voting process. Okay. Seeing none. Could I get a motion to approve the mission statement, guiding principles, and strategies that as they are written that you see in front of you, replacing our current mission statement, guiding principles, and strategies that are currently govern the organization? So if someone could make that motion, that would be great.
I will. You guys did a lot of great work. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Could I get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion on this right now?
I think we talked about this last time, and I forget where we landed, but it might have been in a breakout group too. But I'm just curious what anyone's thoughts might be on the wisdom of passing the mission statement with this current board versus holding off until the next board, because we're gonna vote on a new board beginning this weekend. I'm just wondering what other people's thoughts on that are.
I'll maybe open that up to everybody if anyone on the committee or executive committee I know has talked about this as well too. So any board members or anyone want to comment on David's comment about voting on this with the current board?
What we've discussed as a committee is it's this board that has most been engaged in this process. And, voting on the mission statement is not the end of discussing it. Like, our committee is strategic plan committee, and we have a lot of work to still do related to a strategic plan. That means a lot of decision making about what do we actually do now based on these strategies. But it just seems sort of to be the best way to honor the people who most informed this, to vote on it in the current board, and then to include all of new board members in the process of how are we now operationalizing and planning based on it.
I think the other piece too is taking this survey from last summer that is now going to become older data as time progresses. And so then the work that we've done over the last year to then start over with a new board feels counterproductive in the process.
I would add too, I know I'm not on the board to speak to this, but I liken it to the outgoing board approves a budget, sort of like a gift you give to the incoming board, that they don't have to figure out things being brand new because they have enough to figure out. And that the work of a mission statement or a strategic plan, you typically want to have happen in the course of one board. And then it's something that you give to the incoming group.
I'll jump in real quick. So just so a point of process. So we're going to vote on this, these statements. And what does that vote do? It enshrines it as the official document.
Correct.
Okay, but then Katie mentioned they're still going to be open to changing it or not.
I just meant we have a lot of actual planning to do based on this statement.
Okay.
We as the board will approve the statement. The plans, the actual strategic plan will be a role for the new board.
Okay, all right. You know, and I sit on quite a few board of directors. I mean, it seems to me that the institutional knowledge that this group has is, you know, sufficient and important to move this thing forward. So let's do it.
Any other comments or discussion on that point? Okay. Any other comments or discussions on a different point or any discussion that anyone would like to have?
If we're, I don't know who's on strategic planning, but if I can, will we have a chance to talk about that in the future?
Yep, there's going to be a lot of strategic planning that's going to be happening.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. Okay. Thanks for that comment and discuss or kicking that off, David. I think that's a good discussion, and glad to kind of close the loop on that too. Okay. Seeing no additional discussion, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please thumbs up. Yes in the chat. Yes verbally. All those opposed? And any abstentions? I can't see everybody on the screen, so I'm assuming BJ, you got everybody?
Yep, I got it. And it does pass, so we can celebrate that.
Yay.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. This is a big thing. It's something that I've cared a lot about since joining the board 4 years ago, and it's awesome to see it come to fruition. So thank you for everybody's engagement. And as Katie said, thank you to Strategic Planning Group too, who's done a lot of work on this. So moving on. Annual meeting plan and to-do list, recruitment work group. I believe David R., you're taking that, right?
All right. Apologies in advance for the dogs. I'm putting in the chat the agenda that Sarah Sheeta emailed out earlier this week. So again, if you don't know, here's your last reminder. This Saturday from 1:30 to 3 at Butter Bakery, we're doing the annual meeting. And Sarah LR, I think you've told me we're possibly having music starting earlier than 1:30. Is that a true statement?
Probably beginning at 1:15. So Kenzie and I will be there at slightly after noon, starting to set up, probably 12:30 realistically. We'll be there at 12:30, hoping to be fully set up by 1:15. Music will be starting at 1:15 as people are sort of gathering.
Okay. So there
And
you
probably
go.
playing till like 1:45-ish until the
Okay.
meeting officially kicks off.
Okay. So get there early if you want to catch the entertainment. I'm kind of excited. It's our first in-person annual meeting that we've done since 2019. So that's exciting. I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope it's on everyone's calendars. So the plan is to, I guess, start off after the music's over at around 1:15. Chris, are you willing to do a welcome and an overview of the agenda as the president?
Yeah, would love. Yep,
Oh,
would love
yeah.
to.
I see you wrote yes there. Cool. And then we're doing like we did last year, highlighting at least 3 significant events that Kingfield hosted or sponsored. The first one, Josh, thanks for agreeing to talk about the election campaigns, the info sessions. And then we have a suggestion. Dave, yeah, Dave S is here. Dave, I thought you were really very enthusiastic and your eyes lit up. And I only saw you on the computer when you were talking about the SAP tap. Is that something, I think it's a great example of like, number one, board service, right? And being able to make something your own and having the leeway to do it. And then number 2, a great thing that the board does to serve the community. Would you be willing to be voluntold to talk about it?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then as much as we give the strategic planning group, I hate to give you guys more, but would someone from that group be willing to talk about the mission statement? I mean,
We just met and Brighton volunteered for it in our meeting before this meeting.
awesome. There we go. Is that, yeah, and you guys already filled that out right in there. All right. So then we're gonna have 10 minutes of budget overview. Sarah, LR, and Alice have agreed to co-sponsor that, so thank you guys. And then we're going to go into 5 minutes of upcoming events and initiatives, ways to get the community involved with KFNA. I'm gonna do that. Candidate speeches, I believe Sarah T emailed me. We only have like, I think 4 applications in right now. I think we're still expecting more. Katie, I think you are doing an application, right? Yep. Okay.
Submitted right before the meeting.
I was gonna say, Katie's is
Got
in
got
there.
another one in. But we've actually talked about, given the lack of applications, considering keeping the election. It was supposed to close tonight, the deadline to submit. And I think Sarah T mentioned that we could possibly keep it open through Friday. I know she emailed Kenzie about it too. I don't know what the answer is, but Sarah LR, do you see any issue with keeping it open till Friday so we can get just more applications, more written? And then I know Kenzie and Katie, were you guys door knocking earlier today? Okay, yeah, so ideally we get a couple more, and then obviously we'll still be taking nominations from the floor. So 2 minutes max each. I think that's gonna really depend on, and Jerome's gonna kind of facilitate it like he did last time. It's gonna depend on the number of candidates that we actually do have. Then we're gonna do logistics and timeline, and BJ, I'm happy to do that too, if you want to just give me a rundown beforehand about logistics and timeline. Otherwise,
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And then, and you're gonna be there? Yep, cool. And then thank you in closing, and we're telling Chris D to do that. So there you go.
One quick question.
Yep.
I know the last time we did this, we gave each candidate 3 minutes. Given the number of candidates, do we still feel like 2 is right? Do we bump it up to 3?
2, I think what we should do is make a game time decision.
Sure.
Again, sensitive to the fact that we're taking nominations from the floor. I think what we need to do is, there is a time budget. I don't think it's listed there for the candidate speeches. I think it might be 15 minutes, but I suggest taking the number of candidates and, divvying that up equitably between them all.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, but good point. Yeah, and let's see. Two questions. Do we want agenda handed out to all, or just a single one on a poster? So I think the point being there is, do we want to print off a bunch of copies or have it so that everyone can kind of look at it? I personally think it would be nice just to do it in one location so that we're not giving out a bunch of recycling to people. But if anyone thinks it's really handy to have like the physical piece of paper, happy to consider that too. And then name tags. Do we want name tags for all or just the board? I like the idea of doing name tags for all. Just kind of helps everyone get oriented. But yeah. So I think we're good on that. And then any big thoughts on paper agenda versus a poster board?
I just wonder, since we're doing this mission statement, do we want to have copies of that printed out to look at did
Yeah.
you decide when that was due? Okay.
I think that actually, I think that makes sense. Or, yeah, I mean, it takes a while for people to read it too. And if it's on a poster board, it
Yeah.
would take people a lot of time to read it. But
Is there a way to get that onto just one printed sheet, like a short agenda and then the mission statement draft?
yeah, I mean, the agenda is going to be pretty short. So I think basically the agenda is what you're looking at right now. And then I don't know if the mission statement would all fit on there, but it could be front and back. I think that would be doable. And Sarah LR, if I sent you a template, would you be able to print off copies?
Of the agenda?
Yeah, of the agenda combined with like a mission statement in there. So-
Yeah, and then what we often do is print like the accomplishments on the other side. So it would be a nice way to include that, or otherwise ways to get involved,
yeah. Okay.
like upcoming events or something.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to refine this, if you want to refine this agenda, David, and send me a clean copy, I can do that.
Yeah. And I think I can save some space on the mission statement. Potentially. So yeah, I'll do my best. I'll give it a whirl tomorrow and I'll send you something.
Okay.
All right. Any other, we're yes on name tags. So there you go. And then it seems like, so if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise that's the agenda.
Are we planning on starting this agenda at 1:30? Kind of like, and then having the second 45 minutes be kind of an open time? Is that kind of the thought?
But I think what Sarah LR was saying was that the agenda might kick off at 1:45.
I think that our musician will probably play and then might leave. So I think to make it worth his while to have him play for a chunk at the beginning while people are still sort of showing up and talking to each other, we're getting candidate info. You know, so the sort of meet and greet portion is at the beginning. There'll be treats and drinks out. And then calling the meeting to order at 1:45, 1:50.
That sounds great.
Cool.
Just so everyone's aware too, I'm not going to be able to stay till the end of the meeting. It would be great if at least one person, maybe two, especially if we're carrying everything, can help Kenzie do tear down and get tables and tents and stuff back to the office.
I'm happy to help. I'm not going to be able to get
I'll
there
have
super early, just FYI, but I'll be happy to help with the tear down.
That's great. Thanks. And then my understanding is BJ is going to take anyone who runs from the floor. So we'll have paper copies there for them to write info down. Those will be given to BJ at the meeting, who will enter it. And then voting will open as soon as possible after the meeting. Probably on Saturday, not that anyone will really know.
Yeah, the plan is once I have all of the information from the handwritten thing typed in, the ballot will go live. So hopefully it will be half an hour after I get all the information or something like that, depending on how fast I can type.
And then the plan is to keep voting open through 2 e-news cycles. So. And then I just wanted to, unless I was counting incorrectly, or if someone who is currently on the board is resigning early, I believe we only have 6 open seats recruitment team. Okay, I had seen 7 in notes, so.
The messaging that I saw us put out said 6.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments, discussion on annual meeting? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, recruitment group, and looking forward to seeing everybody on Saturday. Next item, budget 2023. I'm assuming kicking this over, Sarah, Alice, to you guys.
Ahead of agenda. Alice, that means we get more time.
Oh, boy. Well, that may not be all bad. This is going to be a complicated one. Maybe there might be more, leave room for more discussion. As Sarah mentioned earlier, she and I met for a while this morning to talk this through. And after discussing it, I suggested that she actually divide the budget into 3 columns. So that should be what you see when you open the budget. Actually, I don't have it open. I should do that quickly. So one column is just a base budget. So this is just, it's kind of what we would have going forward, and just our basic expenses, not project oriented. Then there's a couple of other columns for items that will be designated projects or other kinds of what I call designated funds, so that the money, that the income that we get is designed, will have some expenses that just have to go with it, because that's the way we're getting the money, is to do specific things, so that we can separate these things, and it should make it maybe a little bit easier to follow that way. So Sarah, you want to explain from here?
Yeah, I thought you were going to take it over. That would have been great.
Well, you know the detail a little bit better, but I'm happy to jump in. So yes, it's general operating, project specific administrative things. So Sarah, maybe you can explain better what that is, and then the project designated funds for, for a total budget are the 3 columns.
Right. So the total budget then is shown in column O. I just put in
Which is white.
titles for income, just for some reason they had disappeared. So just a reminder that this budget covers July 1, 2022 through June. No, I have my fiscal year messed up. June 1, 2022 through May 31st, 2023, and it's called fiscal year 23. So it gets confusing because it doesn't run with the calendar year sometimes. So again, general operating in the light blue column is basically, at least on the income side, money that is assured to the organization and can be used by the organization for running the organization. And the base funding and equitable engagement funds have been committed. And the other items as income are, if not secured through contract, have been pretty solid throughout the years as income, to lead to a income this year of $68,000. The project specific administrative dollars are related to grants that Kingfield has been partners on and received this year. And each of those grants will probably include a small allocation as seen here that can be used for running of those projects. So not general operating other stuff, but for those specific projects that are itemized. And then we also have income for those projects as project designated funds that have also been committed for a total expected income of $100,000. This is less than the budget has typically been for the organization. And we can see Why that is when we look down at our expenses. So we broke it out the same way, the ones that we knew were project-related expenses that had to happen. And then basically administrative. So we come out at this budget with a slight loss of about $7,000. I do want to point out on line 22 and 23, wages in this budget are constructed at 10 hours a week or 10 hours a month, 10 hours a week for the course of the year. For me on line 2022. And then the separate line of wages on 2023 are funds that KFNA pay out for executive director services that are contracted with Lindale. So money that the organization pays, but that they don't see the work directly happening in the neighborhood for. And then also Kenzie's contracted services come out actually of line 27 because she is written in as a contractor. So at 15,600 over in the light green column, that is the money that's paid to Kenzie each year. And because she's contracted through Lindale, she doesn't show up on a wage line item. Kenzie in this budget is also contracted at her current rate, which is also 10 hours a week for the course of a year. So this is a significant reduction in the amount of staffing that KFNA has had in the past. It's not much different than what KFNA has had over the last 6 months as a staffing level. But it is the reality based on the new budget of what the neighborhood association can expect for services.
But you shared with me that you have been running over that amount every single month.
Yeah, that's true. So are there questions about how this is put together? I don't recall mentioning. So column P is Alice and I just talked about what will the future look like. So column 2024 budget is sketched out there. So if no outside grants are found, KFNA can expect to exist on about a budget of $33,000 a year. And then I didn't put expenses in because that will be figured out by the next board about
And the big
how
difference,
they want to deal with that budget.
the big difference from column L is that we don't have that fee that on line 12 that Lindale Neighborhood Association is paying us for Sarah's services and for Kenzie. Big part of Kenzie maybe. So, well, maybe that's not true. They're paying us for Sarah. So that's the big difference between column L and column P. Plus just the decline in our base funding from the city because we won't be getting that extra bump that the council approved. So this is, we should have this in mind as we talk about mergers and strategic plan and just developing what we want to be in the future. We do have some reserves if we want to invest a little bit more, but I think it should be focused on things that we want to invest in that will improve our sustainability in the future. So, but it's kind of sobering to go from $100 and some $1,000 budget to a $33,000 budget.
I have maybe a question that starts there. When you kind of say reserves, Alice, and maybe this is a question for you, Sarah, I'm showing that we are not drawing down any NRP funds with this budget. Is that correct?
Because this budget shows at a deficit, we would have to draw at least $7,000 of NRP funds to spend this budget. There is money in NRP strategies still remaining. Alice, we looked at it today. What is it? $215,000.
Roughly 50 of that is already committed. So was about 150 left, I think.
Correct.
Is what
Correct.
is what we
Because the
discussed today.
organization was paid advances on those, we have to show that the money has been spent, but we don't necessarily get it all paid back to the organization. So all of that money right now is in, most of that money right now, excuse me, is in project related pots. And so I think what KFNA needs to be aware of moving forward is the more projects we tend to do, the more staff time and money the organization spends. So even if we look at using NRP money to kickstart a project or do something, either it needs to be very volunteer led, or with that, we're also going to see an increase of staffing to make sure we get those projects off the ground and done successfully.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to be clear too that there are those dollars available, right?
Correct.
But there's not a lot of those dollars available. So but the option would be to pay for additional staff time, to pay for additional things out of those NRP funds, if that's what the kind of the direction that the board wanted to take.
I would agree with that, with the caution that in our current arrangement, my time and Kenzie's time that's not committed to KFNA is already committed to another organization and other projects. And so to add staff capacity at this point, we would actually have to add people. And so then you have to look at what's an ethical way of adding a person for a project. And it might have to be an independent contractor, because we're not really in a position to be able to hire someone for a long-term commitment, especially in a very tight hiring economy.
Got it.
Yes, that's an excellent point.
So
I have
I
another
will,
question.
no, I just want to say, so typically the board approves the budget for the incoming board. It is possible to keep operating without a budget. It's possible, because you guys haven't seen this until tonight, to say we want to talk about it at the next meeting and to understand this more. So I can offer that. I'm not going to say you have to vote on this. You know, really, this is what it is moving forward. I mean, if you look at how little left there is to trim of the organization, you know, I think I put in $10 a month for office supplies over the course of a year. I mean, like, there's honestly nothing left to trim.
One question I had, Sarah, the difference between the wages 6,000 in the expenses and the 4,400 fee, those are the two line items that are associated with your work specifically at Lindale, correct?
Correct.
One is income, one is expense.
Correct.
Shouldn't the gap between those two numbers be larger? What is the fee that we charge versus your I guess what is what KFNA pays out to for your time versus the fee that we charge Lindale?
That's what the gap.
That is what the gap
currently-
is.
That's what the gap currently is. Yeah, that's what it currently is.
Okay.
Can somebody please cue the sad music? Please.
I have a question. I'm a little confused about the NRP money. If we have $150,000, do you mean Kingfield neighborhood has that money in NRP? But we can't use it unless it's for a specific project?
No, so it's all, I think I shared the crazy 3-page budget with you guys a month or two ago. You know, it's all locked up in different pots. So some of it's in communication, some of it's in events. It can be spent on stuff. It can be spent on things that are in this budget that fall within the parameters of NRP. So I mean, like the sad thing, we have a lot of money in events, but event money, according to the city, can't be spent on music, art, or food. So it's like event money, that's NRP money, doesn't do us a lot of good if we're trying to get people to an event. You know, it's no food, no fun. And then there's other project pots, and they can be moved, and KFNA has moved them in the past. Other project pots, like for the 40th Street Greenway entrance bridge to the 40th Street Bridge, alternative transportation. There's other pots of money that currently there just aren't plans for by the organization.
And I think to my question, that money can be used on staff time, staff hours. But what you're saying, Sarah, is that currently between LNA and KFNA, we're essentially filled up with staff time and staff hours. So if we wanted to create a new event, right, Sarah, and we wanted to use NRP dollars at that new event.
Yeah.
We right now, as the current arrangement works, there really isn't excess staff capacity or staff hours to like pick that event up. We'd have to find other hours, find other resources to be able to fill in that gap.
Correct.
The other thing that I would say here too is that there are, there's in our current budget this year, there are a fair amount of grants in there right now. And what you're showing for 2024 has no grants, correct?
Correct.
So that would be on the assumption that there are no grants coming in 2024.
But those grants would likely be for specific things that would have, that would also have expenses, stuff we would have to do. There would be very little overhead to cover Sarah's time, for instance. So if we were to get a grant, we would have to do activities and encourage expenses that would virtually offset that. So yes, we maybe will, and we'll be able to do more stuff, but it really doesn't improve the budget situation.
Got it.
It improves activities and engagement with the neighbors,
Yes.
which is maybe what the community cares about, is like, oh, KFNA is super active and it's doing this planting project and stuff. But anything that's not grant driven then basically has to fall into that base funding.
I guess I would like to just note that I feel like I need the qualitative budget, and like maybe this is what we're moving into in some of the other discussions in this meeting, but it's hard for me just from this spreadsheet to internalize the like, and therefore these are the 5 things that will not happen. And that's that's what we have to base the decisions on. And I can't remember if we have that somewhere, but like, I will just want a clearer articulation of like the qualitative impact of the funding being down for us to grapple with.
Yeah, and we talked about that. Alice and I talked a little bit about that today, Katie. I don't know that any of us know what that looks like because KFNA has never existed with 10 hours. I get with Kenzie, it's 20 hours, 20 hours of staffing a week. And so I think that is to be determined. What
Totally. But
what
I guess
40
I
hours
would,
a month looks like.
I would really look to you as like the experts on like, here's what we think is, as staff, is the most important. And then therefore that's what this would mean. And then we as the board probably need to bring our like, oh, well, what is our opinion or feeling about grappling with that? But I would respect like your sort of initial suggestion or proposal based on it, I guess is all I want to say.
Is in our packets, do we have a 2020 fiscal year 2022 budget next to this 2023?
I can
Just
do that. I actually wrote it from looking at 2022, so I just pulled that up. I didn't hide the
Yeah,
line,
you did.
sorry.
You did have that at one point. Can you,
Yeah.
or is it even in some of these columns that are hidden?
No, I
I
just,
didn't see a hidden,
I made a new sheet.
Okay,
because I think some of, like, if I were to look at, and that's something that I'll need to do, is look at 2021, 2022, and that kind of tells the
Yeah.
story of, just as you're talking about, Sarah, and I agree, I trust your budget. Just what's cut and what goes away, and then that I think tells or
What I-
narrates what.
what, ultimately what it'll mean, I think, is the board has to be more of a working board. And so for the things that we want to do, some things already, we have volunteers that keep those things going, like Porch Fest, Empty Bowls. But as far as new projects, like finding, the example Sarah gave me today is like finding the money to get the money to do the trees. And then making that happen, finding the volunteers and getting the trees and doing all that. That's an example of maybe what wouldn't happen. It'd be pretty bare bones. We could do a lot of the activities that are already pretty volunteer run. But some of those other new enhanced things like this pollinator project are things that, unless there were a board volunteer or other volunteer who did it, those are the kinds of things that wouldn't happen. Is that fair, Sarah?
I think that's fair. And then I think there's just the ongoing, how much time is spent when an issue arises, whether that's issue is Grand Avenue, people calling and saying, we want to know more. Why were these decisions made? Let's look at the street,
Right.
let's itemize the issues. Stuff like that is an unknown number of hours because it's very, it's a big issue for a lot of people. So it kind of depends on what we put into it, so if the board is responsible on issues like that, that's just a different feel, who cares about that?
Sarah, you mentioned that this budget shows like essentially 10 hours a week of time, correct?
Correct.
And maybe this is to Katie's question. What would you see yourself doing with 10 hours a week of time for the organization? Like, what would you prioritize? And I think that's kind of how you're operating now. So maybe.
Right. And so I guess I just haven't been super strict about making sure it's 10 hours. So I went and looked back at time cards and from the last 6 months, and sometimes it's 75 hours and sometimes it's 40 hours or whatever. But I mean, I think it will be actually sitting down and doing a formula and saying every board meeting is 2 hours. Every executive committee meeting is an hour. Creating an agenda and a packet for every board meeting is an hour. Doing follow-up and reminders is another hour. And just sort of trying to figure out like how much can you get done really in 10 hours a week? How many meetings can you do a month if every meeting takes 5 hours? What are we willing to give up that neighbors care about that the board's not involved in, how do we pass projects on and make sure that people have the connections in the city to keep them alive?
Yeah, I guess I don't know exactly how we like land this or clarify, but I think we really need to know that assessment from you to inform the decisions we have to make. Because you are the expert of your time. And I think we all like really respect what your sense is of what needs to happen, and like need to then grapple ourselves with the different roles we're going to need to take on as the board. So I totally get that there's a part of it that will be unknown, but like I think we do need to begin a process of reflecting, assessing, and making it known so we can make decisions based on that.
And I would say that this model has been happening over the last 6 months, but I think that it's been less obvious what might be missing from less staff time because we've still been mostly virtual. Now that we have so many in-person events coming up, it is really going to take more people being outgoing and obvious and available to be at events, you know, including the annual meeting, but including other stuff, you know, that's being planned. And so I think trying to figure out how we coordinate those events better with the board so that there's always a board rep there that's obvious, that's a lead, will be important. Because it's just not cost effective anymore to have both Kenzie and I at any event or any meeting for that matter.
So I'm kind of stuck on this. Sarah, you're saying that at this point you're only doing, or you are doing more, but you should really only be doing 10 hours a week for KFNA.
Yes.
And even if KFNA had more money to pay you, you'd no longer have the time to do more hours than that because you're doing something else.
I'm contracted 3/4 time with Lindale since last December.
This Kenzie's in the same position.
Correct.
So even if we used or moved some kind of NRP money to try to plan something new or do something like that, we don't have the staff really to do it.
Right. And so a lot of the funding that we have, even for admin, if you look at project specific admin, we have shared money to work on a merger. Kenzie has a little bit of shared admin time. That means that it won't have to come out of NRP, out of a grant. And then we have our pollinator grant and our Nicollet Avenue grants that are going to take staff time to get off the ground. You know, so those projects will be happening, but they at least come with administrative budgets.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important to understand too, like with our current influx of income, right? Like some of that is just actually literally offsetting Sarah's salary because we can't actually, as an organization with our budget and with our income, afford a full-time employee. I mean, that like we can't afford a full-time employee. And when I started on this board, we had 1.5 FTEs.
Correct.
And I mean, that to me, it's just, we're a much smaller deal. And I mean, Sarah, I think it's a testament to Sarah being kind of a duck on water to the point that I guess we really haven't noticed how much smaller of an organization we have because the trains keep running on time. But yeah, I mean, I think Alice hit the nail on the head that we need to be a working board moving forward. I think the expectations for the board need to be a bigger investiture of time and commitment. And especially if there's any ideas that people want to get off the ground, like I think the expectation moving forward would be people would invest their own time to make that project a reality. It's just a different expectation than there was in years past, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there are a lot of neighborhood associations that function on this size of budget, and they have for years. And some of them do great work, and they're very apparent in their neighborhoods. Oh, is there a tornado warning going on, guys?
Yes.
Okay. You can go down the basement. Which one is the bad one? The watch or the warning?
The
The
warning.
warning, I think.
Okay. I never remember which is which. I haven't heard sirens yet. Anyways,
Yeah, I haven't heard any sirens, so.
um,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
So what's the timing on this merger opportunity? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it, what's that? What's the outcome? What's the expectation?
Well, and so that was sort of, that was Alice's question. So if you see the fee on line 12, why is this only a payment through December? I would say that the discussion, if merger conversations aren't going well by December and groups are thinking of not doing it, I would expect that the relationship between Lindale and Kingfield will not continue past that point, and they will go seek an executive director. So I would not expect, and nor would I encourage this relationship to continue forever because of even this struggle that I'm telling you. Kingfield can't really wrap up because their staff is committed somewhere else. You know, Linda wants to ramp up and their staff is committed somewhere else. So we're just right now we are tied together, and luckily the work is together, which kind of helps it look like it's happening in both communities, but it's not a situation that can continue.
Because I mean, after that point, the only other option here really is, fundraising. I mean, figuring out a new revenue stream for the organization.
Right. So
Yeah.
to me, I guess what I'm saying by this is if line P is KFNA's future, if it does not find another solution other than merger.
Yeah.
So is there, just thinking about the working board idea, has recruitment laid out expectations for incoming board members is one of my kind of first questions. And then just what would you propose, Sarah, in terms of, we have 10 hours of staff time here and Kenzie's amount of this time. How many person hours do you think you need from the board to make even just what we had in the past be available?
I don't think recruitment has hammered out really with anyone expectations, including a board training or skills or any of that. I think a lot of the people are just emerging. I will let recruitment speak to that. And I think, Brighton, the question of what does the board need to do is probably one step further off from me figuring out what can I do and what can't I do, and I think
right. Yeah. I'm just trying to, from strategic. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting puzzle because it's like, how do you hand off projects to volunteer and make sure that they're, we've always had volunteer-led projects, but there's always been a safety net. If the volunteer gets sick or their kids get sick or they don't show up or, there's always been a backup.
Sarah, can you let Sarah Cheetah into the room? She's trying to get into the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the budget. So I think that's an interesting question, Brighton, and I think the board needs to figure that out. How do they recruit board members and make sure that they understand their responsibilities and what they're authorized to do?
Yeah. And
To
I guess I'm
send,
just
to say,
thinking,
to plan, without having to rely on staff to go back to.
I think frankly, I'll take the contrary position and be a little defensive of the recruitment group here. what are we supposed to do, right? Like, we hand out flyers with information. Sure, I guess if we want to bog it down in details and like have a really crappy marketing pitch trying to reach out to people that are intimidated by board service, we can be like, the future is bleak, right? Like, we need you to dedicate your life to KFNA. But I do think that in our application materials, I think we give a realistic viewpoint of the hourly investiture that board members need to make in the organization as a bare minimum, and say, I mean, there's been a push in the past couple of years to really challenge board members to make a significant financial contribution, or a meaningful financial contribution, something meaningful to yourself, which I think, I think there's a tension here, because we're really focused on broadening the board to people that are otherwise not likely to sign up for nonprofit board service, right? We want to reach out to all members of the community. And the more barriers to entry I think we create, the harder that task is. So it's a difficult issue, but I think, when I went to the, and Josh hung out with me too, and Sarah, which, I appreciated, but we had a couple people show up at the mixer at Lowbrow, and I was honest with both those people, telling them like, board service and the board and the organization is changed. The budgetary constraint is the #1 priority for the next board and moving forward for the future of the organization. And Sarah T, I know you met with people at I'm forgetting the name of the coffee shop, but
Butter.
yeah. Oh, at Butter. You met at Butter. Okay. I don't know if that came up in your conversations. Yeah, but I mean, I think we're aware of the issue, and it's being communicated to people in an honest fashion.
One of the things I will add is we started this kind of board expectation before COVID. There was, I'm trying to remember, but I think BJ and I know Sarah T, we had quite a few conversations about board expectations, especially with like kind of the onboarding packet. And I think some of that went a little bit away with COVID, and kind of the I would say the role of board members changing a little bit and everything being virtual. But I think that there is some of that work that had been done previously, and I don't know if we're still using some of that kind of like onboarding information that was put together previously. But it's out there, and I think we are moving in that direction. And obviously, COVID kind of put a little bit of a bent in some of that.
So I would say, and I wasn't trying to throw recruitment under the bus. I agree. It's really hard to say. Sometimes what exact expectations are. But I do want to bring up, because I know that it has been talked about, like, is this board moving back in person? And this is one of the questions from someone who's looking at running for the board, like they want to meet in person. And so I think, like, in trying to tell people like what to even expect, if we don't even know if the board's meeting in person, that's not telling them very much.
Okay, so my understanding of where we're at in the meeting is like discussion of understanding the budget in order to approve it. Yes. I guess I would find it very helpful to have more information from staff about the choices you think we have to make. And I just want to be super clear that part of that is like, I am not, as a board member, asking staff to work so many more hours than we are actually paying you for. Like, it's really important that we know that that's happening. And I just think it's like, yeah, I just think it's hard to begin to make some of these decisions without a sense from you of like, yeah, this is what I'm going to need to stop doing. And so that's what I would love as an outcome personally from this.
So I hear what you're saying and it makes sense. And I will repeat, I don't know that this board needs to approve this budget. But I'm also like, this budget has nothing higher. It has.
You've not added any new things, doing new things to the budget that
Right.
would really require.
So the only place this budget could grow over the next 6 months is if a board member says, I want to do this project and I want to access the NRP funds to do it, and I'm going to lead it. That's the capacity right now.
We have sirens, folks.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I jump in? One thing this may be a board killer, I mean, I don't mean to be that guy, but I really wrestle with, missing kind of the capital marketing stakeholder opportunities that we have as an organization. And I don't know, and maybe that falls back on fundraising. I don't know, but there seems to be a captive audience here in the neighborhood. We have a lot of equity, social engagement kind of verbiage in our mission, vision, plan. But we don't really look at the market and how we're poised to take advantage of some of the equity income that might be available to us. So I don't know if maybe I'm way off base. But we need a different strategy for revenue. At the end of the day, this is about money and income, whether it's Sarah doing the work or us or hiring consultants or support. We've got to find a plan, folks, for more money at the end of the day.
Well, so Todd, that some of the things, what I was thinking when I was talking about maybe we use some of the NRP money or some reserve to cover investments. That's exactly what I mean. So we also maybe could, volunteers, you, and other people on the fundraising committee, invest in some of the collateral or some kind of consulting help to bolster the fundraising effort. That is the kind of thing that maybe would be appropriate. That's not what's included in the budget right now. That could be a supplementary budget that we bring forward later.
Right.
But we do need to be thinking strategically like that.
And there's several things, and I don't see there, I think, are opportunities. Maybe they'll come in strategic plan. We gotta let people know that if you live, work, and operate, thrive in this neighborhood, you pay to play. And I'm sorry to say that, but we have developers and businesses here in the neighborhood that do not pay to play. And not just falling back on our own shoulders for making investments by the board members. This is a community operation. And I'm sorry to be blunt about it, but we have to be forward and make the ask. And we're not making the ask. And maybe that's the fundraising role. Maybe that's my duty to do this, but we have to have a plan. And I need, in order to do that, you have to have some type of equity in materials and a brand and marketing and social content. And there has to be some kind of marketing strategy to do this. And so I don't mean to be off base. I'm sorry if I am, folks, but we have to raise money.
Well, and Todd, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I think the tension there is the limitation on staff time too, right?
Oh, then it falls on me. Or on us.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100% falls on us.
And I've got to be able, reading, our mission, vision, and strategy, I don't see anything about, there's nothing capitalistic about what we're doing. It's all wholeheartedly good work for the community and inclusion. But we're in a reality here where this is business, folks. 101. Whether you want me as a real estate agent to pay a sponsorship fee to the organization to get some press, I'm happy to do that. There's more money out there to be made. And whether if it's Ace Hardware and some deal with them for coupon book, or I don't care what it is, or restaurants. We're letting everybody off free to get access to our membership, to our stakeholders. And that's where the money is.
Back,
Okay, we gotta go
Back to
down
the-
basements, guys.
Yeah, can I,
We
could
do.
I just cut, yeah, could I just cut this off for 1 second? Yeah, so there's maybe everybody, I just want to make sure that everybody's not holding on if you're not in a spot that you feel comfortable in. So I at least want to pause this here for the next little bit so that everybody can get to a spot that they feel comfortable in. So
Does anybody know what our risk is out there? Is there, I can't get a good radar read on anything.
I just
So
saw
maybe-
8 mile an hour.
Would we-
It's on us.
would we
Yeah.
adjourn and have a
Yes,
bigger meeting Saturday? Yeah.
we should not continue to meet while there is a tornado approaching.
Yep. So let's everybody should get to a safe spot if
All right.
that's good.
The
for everybody.
sirens
So,
just went down.
yeah,
maybe
the
it's just a
sirens are
pause.
off.
What's the best source of information on this storm? Does anybody know?
I think we all got, well, I got a notification from, like, it was an automated alert. that said-
National Weather Service.
Yeah, and it said it was like, well, it didn't say tornado, it said strong winds, like, or extremely strong winds, like 80 miles an hour
Until
They were-
8:30.
until
It
8:30.
said, it did say to go somewhere.
Okay.
Yep.
You can also turn on, the TV, CCO, Care 11.
Oh, yeah.
Hey Sarah, you want to pause the recording if we're not actually meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll
Now I'm gonna have to
officially
edit
I'll officially
this.
adjourn. I know.
Ah.